Hello, my name is Ted Hulsy. I'm Vice President of Marketing at eFolder and your host for today's webinar event. Welcome to the eFolder Partner Chat. This webinar series brings together leading MSP partners for business-oriented discussions. Today we are joined by Brian Leach from Bluewater Consulting Services and Kevin Wilson from Dynamic Edge. Both of my guests today will share the various ways they have leveraged Anchor to grow their businesses. Before we go through the agenda, let's do just a few housekeeping items. Today's session is being recorded. The recorded version of the webinar will be made available to those who registered for the event. We will also post a recording on eFolder's YouTube channel. We will also follow up with copies of the slides to everybody who registered for the event. With over 105 people registered for today's session, we have put all participants in listen-only mode. You can enjoy the audio version, or audio portion rather, of today's event by either streaming it on your computer or by dialing in over the phone. Questions are strongly encouraged throughout. We have planned a special Q&A section at the end of today's discussion, but you may submit them as we go along, and we will try to address your questions on the fly. Today's presentation follows a logical flow. First, I will give a very brief introduction to Anchor and introduce our, introduce our guests. Next, I will interview Brian Leach, and then I'll interview Kevin Wilson. Each has unique ways in which they are leveraging Anchor to solve problems for their clients and grow their respective businesses. And then finally, we will finish with an interactive Q&A portion of today's webinar. So with that, let's move forward and introduce our guests. So Brian, welcome to today's webinar.
Thank you very much, Ted. I appreciate that. I'm just sitting here at the international headquarters of Bluewater Consulting Services here in beautiful downtown Huntington Beach, California, aka Surf City, USA. But I got to take a minute before I do my formal introduction to say, look, I'm going to just make a recommendation to everybody, and that is that if at the last minute you get asked to do a webinar, you should not take a selfie for your professional photo. I had my custom neon Bluewater sign and my 1995 Microsoft Certified Professional Systems Engineer plaque in the background, but they cropped that out and then made me look like some kind of crazy lunatic. Later today, I'm scheduled for a professional photo, just so you know, with full airbrushing, so the next time you guys see me, I'm going to look like a Kardashian or a Black China. But anyway, all right.
All right. Well, Brian, welcome. And, tell us a little bit more about Bluewater Consulting.
Will do. All right. So we, and by we, I mean my wife and I, have been doing this for about 20 years now, and a term I learned a long time ago is lifestyle, as in lifestyle business, or we call it our boutique business. We've hired a few people along the way, thought about growing it, but it never worked out very well, or maybe I'm just not that good at it. We've got a small group of very loyal clients. We vet new clients carefully. Everybody comes from a referral. I try and bring my vast knowledge and infinite experience to these customers and treat their businesses like they're, like they're my business. We all use the same tools, so forth. We know every owner, CFO, CEO, president, whatever they want to call themselves, and they trust us. We offer a very professional service, as you can imagine, or a very personal service. I consider myself a technologist, and the thing that I've learned over the years as I've gotten older is that it's really important to take that technologist spirit and convey that technology to solve business problems, because that's really what the owners care about. And so that's the kind of the experience that we bring to them. And just to note, I feel that way about my vendors. We're pretty careful in how we vet our vendors. We've been doing business with eFolder since I look back at my old emails. It's 2009 now, and one of the scenarios that I'm going to bring up later on is to talk about a ransomware attack that we had, and to show just the same level of personal service that we offer our clients is what we were offered by eFolder, and that's why I'm up here today.
Okay, well, great. And Brian, is there a certain size of client you serve, or do you focus on any kind of verticals, or is it kind of a geographical focus? Tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, it's I would say more geographical, and it's sort of referrals. So I've got a guy is one guy, right, who does construction services, and he's got a bunch of guys in the field. So we've got small shops. We've got 250-person shops where we help the internal IT folks with their more complicated projects and/or tasks. So that's kind of our range. We really like the 20 to 50 person companies that either have like somebody on staff that thinks they know IT but needs a little bit of outside help. And you know, I come from a certified professional, certified trainer background way back when, and so I like having that ability to be a liaison to them and to kind of teach them all of the basics, because there's still plenty of projects and cool stuff that we can be doing, and I don't want to be doing the day-to-day end-user type tasks.
Okay, well, fantastic. So great. We're looking forward to hearing about how you're using Anchor. So let's change gears, and Kevin, tell us about yourself and tell us about Dynamic Edge.
Hey guys, we at Dynamic Edge, we're a full-service IT support shop and solutions provider. So we're located in Ann Arbor, Michigan. We do have a branch in Nashville and another branch office in Southfield, Michigan as well. We support the greater Detroit area, Ann Arbor area, but we are all across Michigan in that region. We also have our Tennessee branch, as I mentioned, in Nashville, and we support about 4 hours in either direction in that side as well. We primarily, we do all kinds of support, anything 125 nodes and smaller is what we really try to focus on. Beyond that, we've got about 45 to 50 employees across all different kinds of specialties. So I am a project implementer. I've been here about 2 years or so. Bruce McCulley, the CEO, he started it about 18 years ago. The entire point is to be way beyond tech support. You know, we want to do great service, white glove service to people, you know, for those user interfaces. We have back-end RMS agents that we install so we can do fully managed clients and that kind of a thing. Proactive support is the way that we try to manage everything. So that's kind of what we do. We do focus specifically on accounting and medical customers. So we are providing a lot of support for multiple clinics across the nation. We do primarily remote support, but we also do on-site support as well, and those kinds of things. My personal experience, I've been doing IT for about 15 years, 15 to 16 years or so, doing on-site consulting and business consulting for the vast majority of that. I've been working with Anchor and other eFolder products for about 6 years or so, and its various evolutions and such. And I'm going to get into some more of the specifics on really kind of where my breadth of Anchor and that kind of thing, and where we've used it as one of our tools in our toolkit for our solutions. So with that, I'll hand it back over to you, Ted.
Great. I guess just one follow-up question, Kevin. Do you guys position Dynamic Edge as a managed service provider? I mean, is your main revenue, and by that I mean, is it kind of, are you mostly doing kind of project-based work and block time, or is it, do you try to provide like a fully managed, you know, managed service where you charge by the
Sure.
by the employee?
Sure. No, we do it by node type. So we are a full contract-based managed house. We like to move way beyond just managed services. So not just a managed service provider, but a managed experience. So we definitely try to add a lot more than just that tech support to our repertoire.
Okay, fantastic. All right, so so what I'm going to do in just next couple minutes is, you know, we probably have, you know, I mean, I think today when we do a webinar like this, our audience will either be, you know, partners looking to maybe adopt a particular eFolder solution, or sometimes there's existing partners and they're looking to kind of up their game, maybe in terms of deployment or pricing and packaging, or the sales pitch, or the use cases. But I think it's always important to make sure we've got just enough context to keep the conversation rolling along. So if you're not that familiar with Anchor, it's one of eFolder's largest products, and it's a file sync, share, and collaboration tool that's designed for MSPs. So one of the most important things to point out is that it's a multi-tenant solution. So it's really designed for service providers that have you know, scores or dozens of clients or hundreds of clients and thousands of users potentially, and we really want to make sure that we have a solution that allows you to scale as your client base grows, as you deploy more seats, and multi-tenancy is kind of a key functionality there. Now, in terms of what Anchor delivers the users, we live in a highly distributed world where mobile computing is very important. People want to be able to compute anytime, anywhere, across any device. And so one of the key challenges, of course, is, you know, where is your content and can you use it wherever it is? And so core functionality of Anchor is you can sync between mobile devices, your laptop, the server, a home office-based desktop. Everything gets synced to the cloud. That's a key set of functionality. Sharing content is also critical. We have large media files. We live in a multimedia universe. We're producing large webinar files, media files, videos, etc. How do you share that content? How do you collaborate on that content with people inside your company or people outside your company? So sharing large files is another core thing all of your clients need to do today. And then, of course, collaboration is another whole dimension. And we just introduced collaborative web editing just a couple weeks ago, so we're not going to spend that much time talking about that today, but all of these different problems your clients need to deal with, and there are a whole bunch of issues and risks to you know, the data of your clients and the uptime and productivity of your clients. There's all sorts of threats that can you know, cause your clients to lose their data or have whole, you know, machines encrypted or file directories encrypted because of ransomware. And so there's a whole business continuity dimension to Anchor as well, which is if a business user or your client, you know, if they have access to their data on a computing device and everything's safe and sound, they can stay productive and they can stay agile and they can get their work done. So that's kind of just a brief overview of what Anchor is all about. You know, some of the things that are pretty key, there's a whole host of different capabilities that managed service providers and solution providers need. I've touched on multi-tenancy, but also there's things like ConnectWise or AutoTask integration. So PSA integration is pretty important. You want a solution that fits into your business. So can you brand it? Can you put your own name on it? Can you price and package it in your own way? Can you integrate it into your managed service? Do you have choices in terms of where you deploy it, whether into the eFolder cloud or on your own private cloud infrastructure? These are all big care-abouts for the MSP market. But you know, we're gonna dig into this with Kevin and Brian real quick in a moment. But as I mentioned, so there's a whole host of MSP requirements, and then there's a whole two different ways to really think about Anchor, I would say. Is, you know, on the one hand, it's about business continuity. So backing up file and folder level data, making sure you can rapidly recover from a ransomware infection. That is a huge part of the value proposition of Anchor today, especially with the proliferation of ransomware. But also on the business productivity side, we talked about this. I mean, sharing, syncing, collaborating on content, working from any kind of device, you know, collaborating inside your organization with team shares, you know, having your content with you wherever you go if you're a highly mobile professional, or collaborating with external third parties. If you're focused on the accounting vertical, for example, accountants need very secure ways to share content out with their clients during tax season and to collaborate, upload vast amounts of, you know, relevant documentation that's needed to prepare a tax filing, share tax filing documents back and forth. So security in an accounting setting, in a legal setting, in a medical setting is all very important. So those are the main comments I wanted to make about, you know, Anchor, what it is. Now let's get back to our conversation with each of our guests. And Brian, talk to us a little bit about, you know, how you got started with Anchor, and how you're leveraging the solution with your clients.
All right, I'm going to steer things just slightly different than that and start with the fact that, Ted, I really think you guys are shortchanging or kind of short-selling yourselves when you talk about file sync, right? Anchor as a file sync tool. The reality is that if you sell it as a file sync tool, now you got to sell against the guys that learn their technology from the tech guy on Saturday mornings. What's that guy's name? Larry?
Leo Laporte?
Leo Laporte, exactly, right? So you're going to go out and learn your tech information from Leo Laporte, the tech guy, on Saturday morning, and he's telling you, oh, yeah, you got to be using Dropbox or OneDrive or whatever, and now you're selling against that, and guess what? That's free. So I do not like selling it as a file sync tool, right? I sell it as document control. Now you're steering the conversation. You're going to describe why this tool, Anchor in your case, Bluewater Anchor on my side, right? You got your motif fit perfectly with mine. And we're going to sell this thing as document control, okay? Now I can say, I can walk into my client, I can sit down on a piece of paper and I'll write down the following, right? Capital S, 20-point font, capital A, capital K, capital T. And I'll say, this is the Swiss Army knife of technology. That's what I'm bringing to you, the Swiss Army knife, right? I'm going to solve your document control problems. All right, as a matter of fact, what I'll say is I'll walk in, I'll say, hey, Rob, do you know what this means? It's S-A-K-T, and they'll say, nope. I'll say, that's because I just made it up. Swiss Army knife of technology, right? Do you know what I call my Swiss Army knife, Rob? I call it Bluewater Anchor. Do you know why I call it Bluewater Anchor? Because it's the anchor of your brand new document control strategy. And that's how I sit down and talk with them. Not about file sync, because now I got to deal with this whole, free Dropbox thing on the side. All right, so that's for starters. I like to sell it as something completely different, and then we can talk about your Swiss Army knife, right? The Swiss Army knife has multiple knives in it. We've got a screwdriver in there. I've even got a little toothpick so I can get something out of my teeth when I need to, right? So I can talk about all the different things that Anchor can do, because it does 10 different things. So that's probably the most difficult thing about selling it, is that it's so complex and it does so many things, it's hard to sell it on all those different levels. So I'll typically try and find one problem they're trying to solve. I love the company that comes to me and says, you got any kind of a way to fix our FTP problem? I'm like, oh, I got that right here, right? It's in my Swiss Army knife. So I bust out my Swiss Army knife, we put in Anchor, and we're going to solve that problem. Along the way, we can now solve a bunch of other problems that they probably have. We know that they have, but they don't either realize that there's a solution to, or they never had a good solution to it.
Awesome. I love it. I love it. And let's dig into some of the more problems, right? So I love the concept of thinking about Anchor as this Swiss Army knife that can solve a whole host of different challenges. When you go to your client, I mean, if you were to kind of like list out kind of the top problems around document control that your clients are having today, where are the big pain points? Where are the big areas where people are having frustration or productivity problems?
So the biggest issue is that they've got documents all over the place, right? And if you think about all of the folks, especially laptop users, right? These guys have, and these are, in my clients, we've got different types of customers. So I've got the electrical contractor. They've only got a few people who are, in the office, right? Then they got a bunch of guys in the field, and they never come to the office. All their stuff sits on their laptops. And sometimes those are bring your own device laptops, because these guys can't afford to buy a laptop for everybody, or they can't afford to buy the one that the guy wants. So he goes out and gets his own laptop, and they of course say, yeah, you can use that, that's fine. So in that case, the fact that those documents live on that person's machine means that they own the documents, right? It's on their own personal machine. So when that person leaves, you've now lost all that information. So that's one of the big items.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
Obviously, these guys are all sending large documents back and forth, right? So we've got that issue that everybody knows about, so we need some way to be able to do that. You've got to have mobile access. You've got a bunch of guys that don't even get a laptop, right? But they still need maybe access to a document that describes what their work looks like for the day. Well, that's the mobile access, right? We can solve that problem. All right, I've got clients where we've got multiple locations, and maybe you've got ops folks in 2 different physical locations with 2 different physical servers. I can sync those 2 servers together, right? So there's another solution. There's my toothpick, right, where I'm picking stuff out of my teeth with my my Swiss Army knife. Okay, and not only that, but yes, it does do file sync as well. Okay, so those are some of the things. And then the FTP one that I just mentioned earlier, that one, every time I walk in, I know I've got a sale. As soon as I hear the 3 letters, FTP, I'm done.
Right, and then are you doing are you doing file server enablement where you've got clients that maybe have existing servers and have remote staff that are having trouble getting to the file server either because of problems with VPNs or that sort of thing? And have you done much file server enablement?
So FSE, all right, and I love acronyms, so I love to bring an acronym to somebody and then have them not know what it is so I can describe it for them. In this case, our file server enablement piece, right, is one of those things where as a technologist, I walk in there and I go, man, I got something cool for you. Check us out. This is file server enablement. And that business owner is going to look at me and go, I have no idea what the hell you're talking about right now. Right? So you now need to bridge the gap between the two. And so when I can say, look, I've got a Swiss Army knife that I'm going to put here, and I'm going to allow you to have access to all of your files on your server. And it's going to be in the exact place that you remember them being, and you don't need to even worry about any part of that. I'm just going to take care of it for you, and they're going to show up automatically on your phone. They're going to show up on your machine. You can remote into them via the web. They love that, right? And here's a scenario, right? Like here's a guy, and here's a scenario with a client. This is a real life scenario, all right? This gentleman, he's the owner. He goes off traveling across country, right? So here's what I know is going to happen. On Saturday night before he leaves on his Sunday trip to go back east, he's going to be thinking about, oh, man, I need these files. So he takes off from the house, leaves his wife and his kid that he's supposed to be watching a movie with, runs over to the office, starts copying files from the server onto his desktop, and then flies cross country. And I said, Rob, you got to stop doing that, right? We know better now. We got better tools than that. Here's what I want you to do. I'm going to put in my Swiss Army knife. I'm going to make sure that every file that you need, all the files you didn't think you needed, but you need, and then a bunch of files just because we can, are going to be available to you. And we're going to do that automatically. And on Saturday night, you're going to sit there and you're going to watch a movie with Ryan and Lisa. Okay. Then you're going to fly across country, and while you're on your flight, you're going to work on all these documents, right? You're going to update that service document for your service coordinator. You're going to review your spec sheets, blah, 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 blah. You're going to get to the, you're going to fly in. You're going to go check into your hotel, pick up your warm cookie. You're going to go upstairs, take your X1 Carbon that we just bought for you last week, fire that thing up onto the free Wi-Fi, and then you're going to take off for dinner, right? You're going to run across the street to the Applebee's, put on your 1.5s and look through your phone, admire your handiwork of everything you just sent. Meanwhile, back at the hotel, your laptop and your files are automatically going to the cloud, going back to the server right where they should be. The service coordinator is going to wake up on Monday morning and have access to those files, right? You didn't do anything. You went and had dinner and enjoyed yourself. And the tool behind the scenes did all the work for you.
I love it. I love it. I mean, this describes a day in my life. You know, I travel a ton, and this is kind of like, you know, the eye-opening, aha kind of like experiences I had with Anchor. Do you find clients? I mean, do you find clients have a really emotional before-after type experience? I mean, the situation you just described sounds, you know, deceptively simple. You know, there's a whole bunch of great technology working in the background to make it happen, and it really just makes life so much better. But do you ever get like the really wow, like, you know, I mean, are clients like ever blown away, or is it just like, hey, you did your job, and they're far more productive?
All right, Ted, so get this. All right, so the reason this even happened is because, and this guy, he doesn't have time to deal with any of this technology. Even though it's cool and I'm showing it to him and I've known him for years, you know, he doesn't really have time. But these guys are emotional, right? They love to have something that other people don't have, right? They love to bust open their really bitchin' laptop that they've got and show that off when they're sitting in a meeting somewhere. So what he did is he had referred me to another person that he knew based out of Canada, and I don't do any other business with these guys except for Anchor. And I turned it on for them, and they travel all over the place. They're a small shop, and once they had it for like a week, they were emailing me and calling me and telling me how much they love it. Well, they did the same thing for Rob, right? They said, Rob, man, this is badass. We love this tool. So then all of a sudden, the thing that I was having a hard time getting in over there, he's like, well, I got it. How do I use it, right? So now I'm spending a bunch of time teaching him how to use it, and now they're the best guys, right? They go out and tell each other about it. They tell their other buddies about it. Then they're all coming to me and saying, well, we need to have that tool too, right? So they get excited. So yes, they do. They love it.
Awesome. And then, I mean, talk to me a little bit more about kind of user education, because I've actually been kind of frustrated a little bit talking to a lot of partners where I feel like they deploy Anchor, and yes, a lot of things happen in the background, and yes, a lot of things are kind of like, hey, it's kind of like your Dropbox experience, but it's on steroids, and it's highly secure, and it's auditable and controllable, et cetera, et cetera. But there's also a lot of MSPs that are deploying Anchor, and they're not doing a great job training it. They're not doing a great job kind of like changing the workflow at the companies, or helping them evolve their workflow. I mean, do you have anything that you do that's unique in terms of kind of onboarding a client to Anchor?
So the unfortunate reality is that the fact that we're small means that it's really hard for me to spend a ton of time with different shops and different folks to teach them how to use this new tool, because that's what it is, right? It's a tool, and it's a difficult tool to learn. And I'll tell them that up front. Like, one piece of it, the file sync, is nothing, right? This thing does 10, 12 different things that are really important, and every time you learn a new one, you're like, wow, I didn't know I could do that. That's cool. I'm going to do that too. The problem is that what you just said is the training of people. And I'll give you another example. One of our clients that we had rolled this out for used it for a year. Finally, the guy comes back to me and goes, Brian, we can't use this anymore because nobody's using it. I can't get them to use it. I said, all right, well, that's fine. If you want me to come out, I'll meet with you. We'll go over it. I'll teach you how to use it. Get me in front of Randy, the owner. I'll show him how to use it. You know, whatever, right? We'll do it. These guys don't have time is the problem. So you can't teach them when they don't give you the time. But eventually what you can do is what I've learned is I teach a person, right? And you need to teach an influential person.
Mm-hmm.
So when you teach that influential person and get one of them, and as soon as they learn to use it, they want everybody to use it. So you've got to find the right person who can then be the spokesperson for it throughout the organization.
Right.
And then that way I only have to do one
yeah.
person, right? I got to teach one guy. I don't got to teach 20 people.
Yeah, I mean, I think I would challenge everybody listening in today. You know, I mean, think about, you know, I beat this drum a lot, and maybe I'm unrealistic about it, but I kind of feel like, you know, kind of training should be more of a profit center and a billable event, and be something you try to monetize. But on the flip side, I also get it that, you know, like we're all struggling with how much resources we have versus our ambitions. And I love the idea, though. You got to get like an evangelist or a power user in every client when you do a deployment, because they will be the person who's, you know, the squeaky wheel and chatting up and showing everybody how cool it is and changing how the office works and how the company works. So that's a great bit. So
it's difficult too. I'll give you, here's another one other scenario for you. We've got another client, and these guys they're my biggest client. They're the ones that have bought in pretty big into this. So the owner, I get a help desk request that comes in that says, Colleen cannot access the file shared to her from Randy on his OneDrive. And I'm looking at that like, what? Why is Randy using OneDrive? So there's an example, right? Even in a place where they already have it, the owner has not been taught to use Anchor, and he's using OneDrive to send files around. All right, so just paying attention and learning, like even me who's out there evangelizing it, I've got these guys using it, we've got a ton of people over there using it, there's the owner sitting there who's not using it. In that case, I'm going through the CFO, so I don't go directly to the owner. But the first thing I said was, we got to go to Randy, we got to sit on his desk, we're going to put Anchor on there, and we're going to show him how to use it, and he's going to love it.
Awesome. Yeah, and I think it's also, you know, again, there's only so many hours in the day. There's challenges, but I think, you know, there's a whole host of tools MSPs have at their disposal to kind of ferret out, you know, like how bad is the consumer-grade Dropbox deployment problem in this particular client, right? Or how many people are using OneDrive even though they should be using Anchor. You know, so you can be also kind of proactive, I think, in trying to ferret out in a deployment, like, okay, have we really turned the corner in terms of standardizing how people are working with their files and their documents? Are they using the inappropriate tools? Is corporate data leaking out into these various places that aren't controlled, aren't audited, et cetera? So, Brian, talk to us a little bit about ransomware. You know, have you had a chance to leverage Anchor to kind of deliver business continuity or rapidly restore client data if there was a problem?
Tell you, Ted, you're really good at these segues. You must already know that I've had a ransomware problem or something. It's like it's in your head. So last year, I'll give you the scenario, okay? This is last summer. I had, and you know, when you're a small guy like me, you can't really go on vacation. But I went on vacation, and I always make sure that my hotels ahead of time are wired well and have good internet. So anyway, we arrived into Telluride, and we're sitting down for dinner, a little early dinner, like 4 o'clock-ish, I think it was, in Colorado, and my phone starts lighting up like a Christmas tree, and I'm looking at it like, that's not good. So I start checking things out. Well, I find out one of my clients gets to me and says, Brian, we've been hit with what you've been telling us, because I've been pinging everybody, telling them, hey, no Word documents, careful with PDFs, don't click links, right? Well, somebody did, and launched a ransomware attack. Okay, so this is like let's call it 4:15-ish in the day. At 4, I went back and looked at my emails. Okay, and this is when you lean on your vendor, right? Like the vendor who says we do this for you, you're hoping that they do what they say they do. All right, so at 4:35, I have an email to my to Eric Diffin, right, my account rep at eFolder. I said, Eric, I have a major ransomware attack and could use help. Who do I contact to get the fastest support? That's 4:35 p.m., okay? 4:40, I'm going to read this verbatim. 4:40 p.m. from Eric, okay? Hey, Brian. And first of all, he's saying, hey, Brian, like, hey, buddy, I know you, right? Not, who are you? Hey, Brian, sorry to hear you've had a ransomware attack. Luckily, Anchor should allow you to revert back to the previous versions fairly quickly. Open a support ticket in the portal, set it to critical. You should have a repainted within the hour. Only Siri would say that, right? If you don't see the ticket system in the portal, there's a direct link. I'm not in the office. I'm on a personal appointment, so I can't access my computer. However, you can search eFolder support ticket and find the direct link. So that's from Eric, right? Like 5 minutes later, the guy's on his own personal appointment someplace, still getting back to me. All right, and then better than that is I did exactly what he said. I sent over a ticket to their help desk, and I kid you not 5 or 10 minutes later, I get a guy on the East Coast, and I forget that gentleman's name at this point, who's on the phone with me, and we're working through the problem. He's remoted in with me. We're looking through it, and I know he's working out of his house at that time of the evening, right? So, and he stayed up with me for a few hours trying to sort through this problem, giving me my marching orders, what I need to do next, and then that's when we went in and started using Anchor to start restoring some of the files. We had Shadow Protect in there as well, which allowed us to get a number, some components back. The problem with the ransomware attack, especially one where nobody realized it's happening for like 4 hours, right? So, and this thing went right for the network and started doing massive damage. And we were talking about a company with, all these companies hoard their files, right? So they've got tens of thousands, if not hundreds of thousands of files out there that they've saved over the last 15 years. Some PDFs, some Word documents, Excel spreadsheets, right? This software is not stupid. It's out there looking for the stuff where it can do the most damage. Give me every PDF, give me every Word document, and let me find every Excel spreadsheet and start encrypting them. So while it's going through and doing this for 3 to 4 hours, right? It's amazing how much damage they can do in 3 hours to your server. Files are starting to disappear before finally somebody goes to access one of those files and realizes they can't, and then they realize they had this ransomware attack. Well, the problem with our scenario is, in order for me to bring back everything, I've got to, if I'm using Shadow Protect, I've got to bring everything back, right? These are individual files in specific folders that are buried 15 folders deep in, some sales folder someplace that are disappearing, and you don't even know what's disappearing until you go try and access it. The beauty of Anchor and the way it worked was I was able to say, give me every file that was deleted. Because of the way this worked, they were actually deleting, they were copying the file, encrypting that file, and deleting the original. Because of the way it worked, we were able to say, give me every file that was deleted on this specific date and time, and just bring all those files back. Now, that's not a fast process, right? It takes time. But what we did know was I could do that for the folders that mattered, so the ones that people were working on. So I was working with Ryan, who's the on-site guy there. I said, Ryan, what are the projects, what things are important first? Let's work on those. We'll bring that back. Then we can backfill the rest of the stuff that's just old archival type things that don't really matter. We don't need it now, because it took us a good day and a half. That was prior to you guys having the whole, where you guys do snapshotting. but it took us a day and a half to bring everything back. But I was able to bring everything back that they had lost, and we're talking about like 500-600 gigs worth of stuff that had been damaged along the way. So that was when I said, you know what, this tool could be installed anywhere and everywhere. And so even if you have Shadow Protect, BDRs, whatever you have in place, this gives you just another layer, like our security layers. We have backup layers, and this backup layer works for everybody, whether they use it for all the other stuff, all the other features or not. Just that feature alone as an additional backup, I found to be invaluable.
Awesome. Okay, well that's fantastic. Let's change gears and get Kevin into the conversation here. So Kevin, talk to us a little bit about how you guys got started with Anchor and where are you guys seeing the biggest use cases.
Sure. Yeah, so one of the things that we use Anchor for quite a bit is kind of centralizing decentralized file servers, right? So one of the things that we really enjoy using this software as a part of kind of our solution toolbox is whenever we have a new client, and I'm actually not sure who's crackling on the mic. If it's me, let me know, but anyway, sorry. Okay, so when we sit down with a new client, there's often client experiencing some kind of a specific issue, right? Whether that's VPN connectivity, whether that's being frustrated on how to get access to their data on their moving and shaking kind of schedules, right? And that's the entire benefit of the Anchor product, is that it puts your files with you on whatever device you want it, right? Whether you've got a Mac, whether you've got a Windows PC, whether you've got a mobile device, you can access those files as if it were local, right? So one of the things that we do quite a bit, I've been a small business support engineer for many, many years. I started working on it in Small Business Server 2000, right? And that ship is long sailed. And now it's people like us who are cleaning up for the Small Business Server 2011, the Small Business Server 2008, and dare I say, still some of those 2003 ones out there. Microsoft put way too many eggs in one basket in that particular product. And what we have to do as IT providers is we are dissecting these and migrating these customers to now technology, is we have to do something with all those functions, right? So one of the things we do is we go, okay, what kind of functions are you currently using? And oftentimes there is a function that the Anchor product can provide us with. It also allows us to be able to do other third-party style backup solutions. As Brian just mentioned, that layer of backups, layers of solutions is the way that we protect not only ourselves as providers, but our clients, which is why they come to us. That level of protection is awesome.
So let's dig into the problem though a little bit more, like with kind of just
Sure.
data sprawl and multiple servers. I mean, what are some of the situations you find clients are in where they've got kind of yesterday's way of managing their data, and it's causing productivity problems. They don't even know it. So talk more about that.
Absolutely. So I'll give you a kind of an example. I'm just finishing up a product right now that is an entire Mac house. And what we've done is we've brought on, in one of our data centers, we've brought on our own file server, Windows-based file server, and we've seeded that with the Anchor product. And that becomes that central repository that we can use to stabilize everybody out in the field. And we were running into bandwidth problems and everything else. And they had originally had 2 Mac file servers that they were sharing to the other Mac clients from that seed server, right? Those 2 servers that are on site at each location. And they were having difficulties with VPN and feeling not secured, and et cetera, et cetera. So we deployed the Anchor product. We brought up a new file server, Windows-based. All of the shares and everything for both of those servers are seeded from there, and everybody connects back to that central data center via the bandwidth management. and we do a slow trickle bandwidth because the primary files that are being transferred are Word documents, Excel spreadsheets, and PDFs. So each one is very minuscule, right? So it allows us to be able to have really good bandwidth control from client to server so that all of those things stay on a nice trickle. And it does away with the VPN. All of their clients are encrypted hard drives, with GPS chips on it so that we can shut things down if anything security happens, and the encrypted connection between the client and the server keeps things nice and secure. So
you decommission these remote file servers where you're having all sorts of problems. You put in a Windows-based file server in your own colo. You use Anchor to connect everything, so the people back in the two offices are connected via Anchor. Everything's syncing to the file server that you're hosting in your own colo, and then you've got remote users on laptops who are also plugged in and connected to all the content. Yeah, I mean, I think there's a huge issue with just data sprawl today. With laptop computing is so ubiquitous. The reality is, if you don't have kind of centralized data governance and document control, as Brian mentioned it, if you don't have that document control, you end up very quickly with a huge mess where you've got critical content that's out on remote machines, not synced back to other file servers or headquarters staff that might need it, and potentially jeopardized if you don't have good control of those laptops. And if you don't have full disk encryption, you don't have the GPS chips, you don't have control of those. You can have all of these problems, and Anchor moves things completely in the other direction in terms of being able to control that content.
I like that, Kevin. That's good stuff.
Yeah, the nice thing about it is that by putting Anchor on the front end of that type of a server, it enables you to log the transfer of and activity of those files, right? And there really isn't any other kind of good auditing or monitoring out there for that kind of transfers, right? Dropbox and Google Drive and all those other things, they try to go that direction, but because of the partner interaction with eFolder and with the Anchor product, it gives us as partners the ability to go right into the portal to look at those activity logs, to be able to help the client right away, because that's the big problem with going with those big free services or those enterprise services, is that you're talking thousands and thousands of dollars before you even get to a live person. So that support touch is the kind of key to the partner program and the partner component of things. And also with the vulnerability components of the old servers, like small business server, remote web workplace, like the SharePoint systems that are oftentimes hosted and then ported out to outside. More and more of those kinds of functions, if not either A, kept up to date, or B, migrated away from large holes, show up on things like PCI and HIPAA compliance scans. So that's a huge issue when it comes to the remote access and that kind of a thing, right? Like, you can't have RDP open, guys, anymore. Sorry, didn't make the rules. It was never a good idea.
Gotcha. So talk a little bit about, so Mark, you specialize, I think you said accounting and medical, and I'm just going to my Q&A log here, and I just want to remind everybody, if you have questions, please drop them in. But Mark has some questions. He has a specific question about medical clients. Let me just read this one to you. Working with medical clients, if they're syncing files with PHI to each computer, how do you protect that data if the laptop is stolen or an employee takes the laptop home, et cetera?
Absolutely. Yeah, no PHI is actually saved in those types of folders. There's a very specific response to that kind of a thing. You have to keep those things centralized, and you just for safety's sake, no PHI is synchronized to those. Those are business-only documents.
Gotcha. Which kind of highlights, yeah, keep going, Kevin.
Yep.
Yeah.
So a great example is one of our larger customers. One of the things that we do and we design out there is to make sure that any kind of EMR or PHI systems is a centralized data location. So no data that is PHI-based in any point leaves that data center. You are only logging in through your controlled systems, through whether it's 2X, whether it's Citrix, whether it's RDP, any of those kinds of fashions. That is how those users are getting to that information and that data, so that everything is logged and everything stays secure. So yeah, great question about the PHI. We are not moving PHI data around. That stays in the constraints of the centralized EMR system as well as the centralized database of that, because that's where we are protected as partners of their software and their software controls for security reasons.
Right, and I think it kind of underscores, again, really about the term document control, and it just underscores, one of the capabilities with Anchor is it's very rich in terms of all the different choices you have in terms of, what your deployment's going to look like. Are you going to prohibit syncing to home desktops? Are you going to prohibit syncing to, mobile laptops or mobile devices? Are you going to force everyone to use the web portal? Or are you going to have a very narrow, we'll sync to corporate issued laptops that have all the other controlling software on it and full disk encryption, and we're going to allow people to sync to their iPhones, period. You have these choices depending on what vertical the client's in. What is the degree of control you have over that endpoint? Do you have the full disk encryption in place? Do you have an RMM tool on that machine? Do you have your whole security stack on that machine? Do you have the GPS chips so that you have, full physical, kind of, mitigation steps in place if you have a lost or stolen device? You have all of these choices, and you get this with Anchor, but you don't get this with a lot of these consumer grade or, SMB quality things that don't have kind of the MSP feature set you need. So just, Kevin, a different question just about the how you control mobile devices, but I think T. Robin Cole asked, what are kind of chips? Can you talk a little bit about these GPS chips and the degree of control you can have over these mobile devices?
Well, the GPS chips and that kind of thing that I'm mentioning are simply the manufacturer-based security chips that you can upgrade some laptops to, right? So I'm not going to go into a huge kind of security conversation about unified threat management, because that's not really this specific type of webinar. So great question, but I will say that when it comes to those kinds of, always look at when you're providing hardware suggestions to medical and accounting-based clients, that you're taking all of the layers of that security into account. And physical theft is always one of those things, right? The nice thing about the Anchor product is that as long as that user notifies someone that their laptop got stolen, we can, through the Anchor product, you can find out when that Anchor agent maybe went offline, if it's still offline. If it is online, you can initiate a clean of that machine, right? And this is, even if it's not, no one's gotten into it yet, right? You can initiate that on the back end from a service standpoint. So, there's those other kinds of things. Physical theft of those kinds of laptops and such, or those medical devices, is always a critical issue. And there's lots of different theories on how to do that physical lockdown. That answer it well enough?
Yes, and Brian, did you have a comment you wanted to make about that?
Yeah, I was just going to say that feature that Kevin just mentioned is huge, right? The ability to be able to remove files from the remote device as soon as it comes online. I mean, it's amazing to me to watch how many laptops get lost or stolen. I mean, it just seems to happen, right? And busted windows out of cars, whatever it is. But I see 4 or 5 of those a year with my small client base. It's just amazing to me to think about that. And so this, and especially the other, I'm seeing more of the bring your own device, because these companies can't afford necessarily to buy everybody laptops. So when somebody says, hey, can I just use my own laptop, they're very willing to say yes. But that's a whole nother, set of problems in terms of security and who owns the documents. So if I can now offer them the ability to have their documents in this document control software that we have, right, and that person decides to leave and it's their own personal laptop, we can retract those files. We can can delete them remotely as soon as they come online.
That's right. So, and this kind of takes, there's a question in the Q&A log here that kind of takes it to the next level a little bit, but just, what do you do about the fact that, well, let me just ask Mike's question here. He says, how do you prevent a client or one of their users from moving files from their synced folder to, the C drive or an external thumb drive? So talk a little bit about that dimension to data control.
You want to handle that one, Kevin, or you want me to? chime in?
Take a crack at it.
Thanks. You know, honestly, I think the answer is I don't know of a way to prevent that. If they want the files, if they can get to the files on the network, they're going to be able to get to those files and copy them at some point when you're not looking. So I don't think that eFolder or Anchor in this case is offering any kind of a solution otherwise to try and prevent that from happening. Unless, Kevin, you know something more than I know.
So the way that I will kind of dovetail on that, you're absolutely right. I mean, what it comes down to is that by us putting Anchor product on the front end of that file server, then it's allowing us to be able to log things at that stream, right? But once it gets into that machine, then you're under contract of employee agreements, is the best way that I can put it, right? Like in our kind of field and in our experiences as consultants, oftentimes clients want to throw money at technology to resolve an issue that they're seeing that is easier resolved with a piece of paper and a signature. So never discount that kind of unified threat management as a layer, as we've continued to talk about, those layers of solutions, right? You still got to have your risk agreements, you still have to have your employee non-disclosure agreements and all those other kinds of things to make sure that we're all covering our own butts.
Right. I mean, I guess a different way to say it is, you know, technology is not going to eliminate completely, you know, crime, fraud, bad actors, negligent employees. You know, you can't, the technology can never eliminate every bad habit that humans have. And, you know, there's always a tension between, you know, productivity and convenience and security and privacy. And I think, I mean, to me, I've always, on this particular topic, you know, my thinking on it is, I love Kevin's point, right? There are other tools like legal agreements, rules, you know, basically, you know, other ways to govern people's behavior than how the software actually behaves. There's that. You also have, you know, abundant different deployment choices. You could say, look, we're not going to sync to remote Macs or, you know, like machines that aren't under corporate control. We're not going to sync to BYOD devices. You can make that decision on a client by client or your entire client base decision. So you can make all those. You can make all those decisions. And to me, what I would argue is that Anchor is just part of the puzzle of swinging the pendulum back. I mean, if you go into most small businesses today, you see how infested with privacy risk, you know, things like consumer-grade Dropbox infesting the workplace. And if you see how completely out of control corporate data is today, Anchor is just swinging the pendulum back. It doesn't solve every problem. It doesn't eliminate any sort of bad actor who could try to pilfer data. But it swings the pendulum back, and you start helping your clients get their data back under control. You get an audit trail. You have choices. You can take other measures. You can put surveillance software on the machines where the Anchor data is being synced. You can lock down USB drives. I mean, there are other things you can go do, but it doesn't, you know, it's not like a perfect world, right? It's really about preventing the Wild West scenario with corporate data, which we see in a lot of clients today. That's at least what I would suggest.
And I would say that it gives you... Go ahead, Kim.
Oh, sorry. Yeah, this is Kevin, and this is one of the reasons why I was so, thank you for that question again, Mark, a few minutes ago about the PHI. You know, like I want to make sure that that's very clear, and that is one of the reasons why, is because you don't put PHI out there, ever.
Exactly. And Brian, did you have a follow-on comment as well?
Yeah, I think the difference of what Anchor is offering is that if you have all of your documents under Anchor management or Anchor control, maybe they can steal a copy of the document, but they didn't steal, you still have a copy, right? You don't have all your stuff sitting on their laptop where, I guess they could park things on the side that you never saw, but generally you're giving yourself a better opportunity to have a copy of that document. When somebody leaves, you still retain a copy. Maybe they stole one from you, but they didn't steal the original.
Right, and I mean, I won't mention any names, but I mean, I've seen situations with fairly large, sophisticated companies that, you know, had such an antiquated kind of way of dealing with this data sprawl problem, is they would have field salespeople who would be summarily fired for low performance, and all of their data was like on that remote laptop. And in this particular case I'm familiar with, that employee literally was so ticked off about being fired, they simply did not return their laptop. So they literally told their employer, gave them the big finger and said, screw you, stop returning phone calls. They're incommunicado, they're not even responding, they have their corporate laptop, they're stealing their corporate laptop, they're not returning the laptop, they keep all the data, the employer doesn't have a copy of the data, so all of those client files, all of that proprietary IP about the clients that salesperson was serving is trapped on that laptop, which now has not been returned, and the company basically says, well, we're kind of really in a situation because we fired a bunch of people, we don't want to even deal with this, and we don't even want the legal bills, and they just say, well, we'll just give up. And those situations are happening every day with all kinds of business clients. And to Brian's point, we've got to be MSPs, solution providers, we've got to be swinging that pendulum back to get all this data back under control. You can't solve every sort of mishap that's going to happen with employees and bad actors, but you can start knocking down the pins and eliminating these problems one by one. Okay, so we only have a couple more minutes left here, guys. Maybe just a couple comments. Pricing, packaging. How do you guys, bundle, anchor in, or price and package it? Any couple just tips for our listeners today?
This is Brian. I tend to sell it on its own, so I don't package it with a bunch of other stuff. And we're month to month. To me, when I sell something, I want somebody to like it. I want them to pay their bill at the end of the month or quarterly, whatever it is, because they love the product, right? Not because I'm holding them hostage to do it. So in our case, and I don't like to sell anything too, like I don't want to sell something for 20 bucks, so I don't want to sell a seat and you buy one seat. What I want to do is I want to package it. So I tend to package mine with, 5 seats plus file server enablement for, and I'll do like $130, I think it is. So you're looking at roughly in the $25 a seat situation. And and I've always thought that was about the right price point. If I got somebody who only wants 3 seats, then a one-off here or there, I might say, okay, well, you're gonna need to buy 3, and they're 30 bucks a pop, so there's 90 bucks. But generally, I want to sell it in a package at 130. Otherwise, we have a $200 package. We've got anywhere up to 400 bucks typically right now with our existing clients. So I try and get anywhere from 130 up to 400. And what I'll do is I'll sell that first package and then add on users. And if somebody's going to buy like 30 users from me, then obviously I'm going to give them a better deal, and maybe that's going to drop down to 15. I'm down for the big guys, right? Like 10 bucks a seat, so less than I want to get, but I'd rather have that big number at the end, and it still makes sense for me. I'm still selling it at a good price, so that's how I do it.
Fantastic. Kevin, any comments on pricing, packaging?
So one of the things that we do is we do all of our pricing pretty comprehensive for the solution that's being provided. So we bundle it in with all of the rest of our comprehensive contracts. Typically that is a seat per user, which includes our RMM agent and a lot of those other kinds of things. And how much that is for each seat depends on what's on the machine, right? If it's something that is like a remote managed SIN client, you're going to be spending a lot less than if you're a MacBook user with 40 gig in your Anchor folders, right? Yep. So we have kind of a minimum that we bundle, and then we also always make sure that we communicate, and here's the best thing, communicate to your clients. Always communicate to them on what those line items are and where value is coming from. Otherwise it gets next budget cycle. That's all I have to say.
Okay,
but,
all right.
But just make sure that, if always provide growth capability, right? If you're a user and you've got that quota, make sure right off the bat that they know that they're paying for space too. There's going to be a time if they start using it all over the place, which is awesome, that they might have to pay a little bit more later on to up their quota, right? And that protects everybody from, making sure that you don't lose your shirt when you're reselling it, because we want to make sure that the other layers of backup have enough storage space, right? When you're backing things up in layers, each layer produces more data. You got to manage that data. So that's how we price it. We have a minimum, and then if you go over, if you're a specialized user, then we have that discussion with the client, and that's a per client basis.
Great. All right, so that's kind of the final.
I combine mine, Ted, just so you know. So if it's, let's say, 5 users, then we have a max on our space as well. And then I also do charge a setup fee, right? Because you need a professional installation of this to get it right. And that sometimes means looking at their file server and trying to analyze what's on their file server first and how they've got their files laid out to better implement it.
Exactly. All right, so lots of great, again, now to underscore the flexible options, you know, the way we take this thing to market into the IT channel, you guys have a lot of different choices on how you price, package, deploy, and charge for Anchor as well. So we're just about out of time here, guys. Brian and Kevin, awesome, awesome insights to get today, you guys. So thank you very much for joining us on today's Partner Chat.
My pleasure.
Welcome.
Okay. All right. So thanks a lot, everybody. We're about done here. So this was a Partner Chat, eFolder Partner Chat webinar focused on Anchor use cases, deployment scenarios, how to price and package it, how to serve your clients. And I want to thank everybody for making time for us today and joining us. This is Ted Hulsy, Vice President of Marketing, signing off. Thanks a lot, everybody. Take care.